You're listening to the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast. We're back with another edition of the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast. My name is Kevin, and this is episode 8. Well, just so you know, this episode is proof that your comments and emails can steer the direction of the show. After we aired episode 3, where we talked to Alicia Rose, who is the club booker for the Doug Fir Lounge here in Portland, a common question that popped up was, I'm not quite ready for a club like the Doug Fir, or my music doesn't seem to fit with that type of venue. What are some other booking options out there for me? Well, in this episode, you'll be hearing an interview Robert did with Fran Snyder, who runs a website called concertsinyourhome.com. That's concerts with an S, concertsinyourhome.com. And basically, Fran is a big proponent of the home concert scene, where an artist performs right there in someone's living room. So their website is a great resource for artists who are trying to book some house shows or shows in someone's home. And it's also a great resource for someone who's interested in hosting some shows at their house. He's really just trying to connect the two pieces of the puzzle together. And I hope this interview helps to get some of the creative juices flowing as you think about possible venues where you can book your band or yourself as an artist. You never know, it could be your next door neighbor's house.
Hello, this is Fran.
Hi, Fran. This is Robert from the DIY Music Podcast.
Hey, Robert, how are you?
Very well. How are you doing, Fran?
Great. Beautiful day here in Lawrence, Kansas.
Why don't we start out, if you could just give us a little bit of background on the website, concertsinyourhome.com.
Okay.
And then maybe we can move into a little bit about what house concerts are and why indie musicians should be interested in what you do.
Okay. Well, I guess we can start with the website. The site is, I guess, officially a year old now. It took about 6 months to sort of develop it. We launched it last June, actually a year ago. And the main thing that it's designed to do is to help artists and house concert presenters find each other, and in the process, sort of grow an online community of artists and music lovers that are into the idea. And the feedback has just been really great. And I'm consistently hearing from artists that if it wasn't for house concerts, they probably would tour a lot less if they didn't give it up altogether.
Yeah, well, house shows are really a really integral part, I think, of the music scene and a part of touring that a lot of people may not know about. And I think it's been hard for people to really find a good resource, especially one that stays up to date, because I imagine that, especially with house concerts, people move out or stop doing shows or only do them so often.
Yeah, but I mean that's going to happen in clubs and coffee houses fail and fold and get burned down. And there's this world is always in flux, and I certainly don't think house concerts are going to avoid that fate, but yeah, like you mentioned, sometimes people move, or they have a baby, or there can be any number of reasons why somebody will stop hosting. But the wonderful thing about it is when people host, they really have the opportunity to turn a lot of their friends and neighbors onto the concept, and what'll often happen is as somebody sort of gives it up, somebody else picks up the gauntlet. Somebody who was a regular at their house concert series doesn't want it to go away, so they say, you know what, we'll start doing it at my house.
It seems significant to me that you're concentrating on folk music because it seems like of any other genre, that is the music that truly began in the home.
I don't want to say folk music per se, but more of these singer-songwriter people that host house concerts are going to be more into more mature type things. And I don't mean Frank Sinatra, although why not? But we've actually had a few house concert presenters that want to hear like jazz combos. So there's room for everybody, so to speak. But because of the nature of house concerts and some of the traditions that they employ, like giving the artist a free place to crash and feeding the artist and that kind of thing, that stuff becomes problematic when you try to bring in a full band. Not just the obvious things of having to bring in amps and that kind of stuff, but a lot of the hospitality sort of becomes a little more strained if you're trying to put up 4 or 5 guys.
Right. Well, I think it can be done, and I'm going to try to cover that a little bit in an upcoming episode. There are other concerns for sure when you have a band playing in your living room or basement, hopefully without getting a citation from the police. Alternative venues in general are just really a great resource for musicians of all kinds, and house shows especially are just so intimate, and they really bring people together and connect an audience to an artist.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful tradition. It's been the more research I do on it, the further back it seems to go. I think in the modern form, house concerts have been around probably 35 to 40 years. Probably started in the early 70s, late 60s, and of course people have always sort of gathered and played music. But what's happening today is you have these traditions of the touring artists coming through town, and the people that actually attend the house concerts generally are donating somewhere between $10 and $20 per person to the performer. It's higher in California. Seems like $15 to $20 is pretty common out there in California, but most of the rest of the country is usually hovering around $10, $12 a person.
So do you think that these artists are making a comparable amount compared to what they might make at a venue where more people would be attending?
It's so counterintuitive. I'll give you an example, and hopefully she won't mind me sharing this. But I hosted a house concert for Edie Carey. I'm a performer first and foremost. That's what I do. But I love house concerts, and I happen to have a decent space for it here, and I have a lot of friends that tour, and so when I can help somebody out, if I'm not on the road, I'll occasionally host a house concert here. This friend of mine, Edie Carey, was coming through town, and she played our house and probably made about $600.
Oh wow!
We had 33 people. Everybody kicked in $10. It was $330, and then she pretty much sold a CD to everybody in the place.
Nice.
So when you compare that now that's a good night. There's house concerts where you can make $1,000, and there's some that you're only going to make maybe $150, $200. All money aside, though, it's that experience of being in a room where everybody's there to listen. And whereas if you play a club or a coffee house, unless you're a name act that's sold out the place, and sometimes even that doesn't do it. But the idea of you actually commanding everyone's attention for 90 minutes in a club or coffee house is just almost unheard of these days. Music is something that our society is learning to very much take for granted, because we get it everywhere. We get it, in the grocery store, and we get it, on all our TV shows, and it's constantly hitting us. We're constantly seeing performers in clubs and coffee houses getting ignored, and that becomes the status quo. And regardless of how good or talented you are, you can be there just killing it in a cafe, and nobody's paying attention. And if they walk into a room and they see everybody ignoring the performer, they're going to ignore the performer.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's James Taylor or lead singer of Verve Pipe or Duncan Sheik. If they don't know who it is, and if they don't recognize the song, they're going to fall in line with just like everybody else.
Now, I imagine a house concert would have more of a built-in audience. I mean, not that a cafe or club doesn't have a built-in audience, but If you go to a cafe or club, you might be there for the coffee or the people. And whereas if you go into a house concert, you're probably there for the music.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's kind of the beauty of it is that a house concert actually creates an atmosphere where it's very uncomfortable if somebody starts to act in a distracting manner. You have to educate the people if it's your first time hosting a house concert. You've got to make an announcement. Listen, guys, this is a concert. This is not a private party where the artist is playing in the corner and everybody's talking in the kitchen. This is a concert situation. We've set up the chairs. This person traveled a long way, and she's fantastic, and we expect you guys to pay attention for the next 40 minutes, and then we'll take a little break, and you guys can stretch and refill your drinks, whatever you want to do, and then we'll do another set. But you have to educate people that it is a concert situation because people have forgotten what that's like. They've forgotten how to listen to music, and but once they get into it, once the singer's into the second or third song, you see them. It's beautiful. They're looking at each other like, "This is so freaking cool. I had no idea this was possible." You can have a national touring act in your living room, playing 5 feet from you, and they really get turned on to the concept. And I've yet to do a house concert where I didn't at least get at least 2 invitations from the guests in the audience saying, well, next time you come through town, you got to play our house.
Now, what would you say to an artist who is listening to the podcast and is not real familiar with doing house shows and is interested in pursuing that?
The main thing to get started is first of all, you have to decide where you are as an artist. It's very easy for people to go, yeah, I'm good enough to do a house concert. But I recommend that you go see one because it's a different kind of experience. And frankly, there's a lot of artists out there that are not comfortable with how intimate the situation is. It can be very nerve-wracking. If you're not comfortable playing, in somebody's face for 40 minutes with your material, it can be very unnerving. Yeah, it's not the same as, being on a stage where the lights are sort of obscuring the audience or the casualness that happens from playing in front of a crowd that's not paying attention. So it's something that I recommend everybody experience. First of all, like go and be in the audience at one of these. There's enough of them around the country, and you shouldn't have to drive terribly far. I mean, unless you live like northern Wyoming or something. But if you live near a major metro area, mm-hmm. you should be able to find a house concert in your area and get yourself invited. Send an email to whoever's hosting it and see what it's like to hold a crowd's attention for 45 to 90 minutes and realize that even though that's really only an album, maybe an album and a half's worth of material, that you've got to be realistic about how much of your material is ready for that. A lot of artists think just because they wrote 15 songs that they have 15 great songs. And so it's kind of like a little disclaimer here because the people that host house concerts, they have the luxury of they're not trying to make a living. As a matter of fact, they typically don't make any money off these shows because you don't want to run a business in your home. You start running into legal hassles and that kind of
right.
thing. So generally, all the money goes to the performer, with a few exceptions. But these people have 4 to 10 opportunities a year to book somebody, and that allows them to be pretty darn choosy. And there are acts out there that have 3, 4, 6, 7 albums, 20-year careers that are out there doing this house concert circuit that are going to have a little edge on you. And not just because they're older than they've been around, but they've got more material to draw from, and certain material is going to work better for a house concert audience than others. So it's kind of a long-winded sidetrack there, but I kind of want to make that clear. House concerts are a wonderful thing, but they're not for everybody. If you can't play as a solo or a duo or a really light trio, you're going to have a tough time, fitting into people's living rooms, sort of adapting to the situation that house concerts provide. But that said, the number one thing that you can do is to educate your fan base. And we're having a lot of people tell us that they're actually having success just by putting a banner to our site on their website, because that's reaching their fans. Their fan who already enjoys their music sees our banner, goes, "Concerts in your home, what's that?" They click on it. Then they go. It takes them to a website that basically sort of helps them fall in love with the concept. You can see videos, you can read articles, testimonials from people that host concerts, people that tour, and all of a sudden you realize there's this whole other world out there. As a music lover, you can be a significant part of the careers of artists that you really love and respect. So that's the number one thing to do, is educate your fan base, because these are the people that already love you. I'm one of those people that, and there's several artists around the country that do this as well. I occasionally host them myself. No better way for me to educate my neighbors and my friends in this new town that I moved to than hosting one here. When I had Edie Carey play here, I did the second set with her. She did the first set on her own. We did the intermission, and then the second set we traded back and forth. And so a lot of my neighbors and people that I have a tough time getting to come out and see me at a traditional show got to hear me play. So I sold a few CDs, and several of those people approached me about doing a house concert at their home in the future. So that's a great way to get the ball rolling, is actually hosting one yourself.
Yeah, that's cool. I like the idea that you can, as a musician or as a music fan, invite, one of your favorite performers into your own home and, see them in that setting.
Yeah, I mean, you can literally, open for one of your heroes. You find somebody that you really like and admire that does house concerts, and there's tons of them out there. And you find out when they're touring through your area, and you offer to host a show for them. And chances are, if they don't have a huge following in your town, if you can get 20 to 30 people to chip in $10 a head, you'd be amazed at the caliber of singer-songwriters that will come play your house. People of the caliber of like Michael Hedges. I mean, there's tons of these. He was sort of a trailblazer, but there's a lot of people out there that are doing Michael Hedges and then some, and they're struggling just like every other artist out there is doing. And the opportunity to play in front of a captive audience is something that they're oftentimes not going to pass up.
Now, what would you say to someone who listens to the podcast and is like, "That sounds great. I'm going to host a house show in my house." What do they need to be concerned about? Legalities? Is it okay for them to charge at the door?
Yeah, good questions. Generally, and this applies to no matter where you live, it's not a good idea to even say that you're charging $10 a person, or just the word charging. Omit it from your vocabulary. It does not belong anywhere in the house concert, language. Generally, you approach it like this. It's usually an invitation only,
mm-hmm.
and there's ways to broaden that, but it's invitation only, and we request or we ask for a $10 donation per person.
Right.
That's really how you do it. Because essentially, when you do it like that, it's the equivalent of a Tupperware party or a Super Bowl party where everybody comes over and everybody chips in, $10 for a keg and pizza. You know what I mean? So the idea that, number one, you're not open to the general public, and number two, you're not charging admission, is going to go a long way towards appeasing anybody that would question what you're doing. If you happen to live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, your rules are going to be a little more strict. You should always be concerned about things like parking. It all depends on the size of your house concert, but if you've got 30 or 40 cars on your street, that can piss off a couple of neighbors, and somebody complains, and the next thing you know, fire marshal's going, "How many people do you have here?" So it's all in planning, but there's nothing overtly difficult about it. As far as the setup goes, you typically, and you'd be surprised at how many people you can fit in a living room if you get a little creative, and you don't have to go out and rent a bunch of chairs. You always want to invite your neighbors, so you borrow some extra bar stools from your neighbors.
Well, there you go. That's the do-it-yourself attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And people just really, they're just totally charmed by these events, and I think it's there's so much variety in how these things are held. Some people will cater the thing. Some people will have beer and wine. Others will just have coffee, tea, and cookies. And what's very common is for the host to have like a potluck dinner before the show. The show will be at 7:30. They'll do a potluck dinner at 6. Everybody brings a dish. So you don't have to be out of pocket any more than you would be for any sort of normal get-together at your house.
It just seems like such a great way to build relationships with fans as well as other musicians.
You can't beat that connection. And you wind up, it's been my experience that you make long-term fans, and you're generally playing for crowds that are willing to drop $10 or $15 for a CD, whereas if you play in a club, you're playing for a bunch of college kids that are like, yeah, you sound great, we'll go burn your stuff off of the internet. Or, they're trying to talk you down from $10 to $5 on your CD. And, right. I'm really cute, can I have one free? You just really don't get that at a house concert. My experience, I've got a variety of stuff, and I'll sell several CDs per person, oftentimes, So it's a magical thing if you play the kind of music that works in this format, and even that is growing. I think the more and more hosts we sign up on the site, the more and more diversity we get. We signed up a guy in Georgia who has like a 50s themed bar in his basement, and he wants to hear sort of like little blues combos and that kind of thing. And he's like, I get tons of bluegrass around here. He lives up in the mountains of Georgia, and it's like there's tons of great bluegrass acts, but I'm looking for more like sort of a bluesy, jazzy thing. He wants to hear something different, So it's really cool, the diversity that's starting to build in. We actually have a flamenco act on the site, and I'd love nothing better than to see children's performers, jazz combos, and all kinds of acts get this kind of work. But it's going to take some time to build, and we have to sort of keep a long view on this thing.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. I was checking the internet the other day looking for other house concert resources, and I really didn't find very much. I found a few personal websites for house venues with booking schedules and stuff like that, but nothing as comprehensive as your website. You'd think with all the thousands of venues out there that do offer their houses for musicians, not just in the United States but abroad as well, there'd be more out there. There'd be more on the internet.
Yeah, and when you think our site, we're hands down the most comprehensive list on the web, and certainly the most up to date and accurate. We're getting 2 or 3 new hosts a week, and it's continually growing. And when you look at the fact that we don't have everybody, if you were to sort of make an estimate, there's probably 400 to 500 house concert series just in America alone out there. So they're out there. And our directory is a voluntary thing. I don't just grab people's information off the net. So they get an invitation, and some of these people like to stay below the radar, and they don't want to be on a list, and they've already got their mailing list of 400 people, and they're set. They don't need our help, and respect that because it's a private thing. But it's amazing to me how many of these people are very happy to be public about what they're doing, and just so welcoming to new artists. We make a distinction on the website when a host signs up. They can put a green light, a yellow light, or a red light, so an artist can see at a glance, should I call these people or should I email these people? Red light means we're booked up, thank you, but you're wasting your time. If we don't know you, there's no point in contacting us. Green light, of course, means, hey, we're wide open, we'll talk to anybody. And the yellow light means we are open to new artists and people that we've not heard before, but we do have some information either on the concerts in your home site or on our own website that will tell you what we're into. If we're strictly into bluegrass, don't bother us if you're a blues act. So that saves the artist time, and it saves the hosts sort of the aggravation of having to tell artists no, because these people love artists, and the last thing they want to do is have 50 emails a week from artists that have no appeal to them, despite the fact that they may be extremely talented. Nobody likes to say no. We try to make it easy for everybody to sort of tread lightly.
Mm-hmm. Now, are there artists out there that are touring house shows exclusively?
That would be a challenging thing to do, because generally these will only happen on weekends, Friday nights, Saturdays, and Sunday afternoons, and that's another one of our major objectives here is expanding that a little bit, trying to get more hosts to consider the idea of doing mini house concerts during the week. Maybe a single set for an hour, because it's going to be tough to get a bunch of people to come to your house on a Thursday night. But for an artist who's on the road, who's looking to not pay for a hotel and maybe just play for a handful of enthusiastic people, why not? And I think most people they go to their Toastmasters meetings or kids baseball games for an hour on weeknights. So I think like a little hour show. The idea of doing a mini house concert, I think, is the time's come for that. And so if we can start having these little Thursday nights and Sunday evening things popping up around the country, that'd be a fantastic thing. So yeah, the idea though is a lot of artists won't tour unless, and I shouldn't say won't, but they'd like to have at least a house concert on the weekend to pay for the tour. So they'll book a house concert or two on a Friday or Saturday, and then book clubs, on the way up and on the way back. Because generally, if you're a solo act, a lot of venues want bands on the weekends anyway. So it's actually kind of a nice fit if you're a solo or duo act to focus on the club stuff during the week and try to get your fans to host shows for you on a weekend.
Yeah, from my own experience and the few tours that I've done with my band, it was always the smaller towns and venues and house shows where we really seem to shine the best, because we're able to, make these connections with people. Usually we would sell more merchandise, and very often you would connect with people that'd be more than willing to help you out next time you came through town. And it's never really my experience with club shows. There, like you said, there are too many distractions, and people for some reason are a little more self-conscious.
Yeah, and that's part of my my passion for putting this site together was the idea that music shouldn't be something that you just stumble upon when you order a cup of coffee, and a lot of really talented artists out there are stuck in that situation. They find themselves, playing, restaurants and nightclubs and things where they're one of many distractions that are available. There's TVs overhead, there's pool tables, there's video games, whatever, and you're just one of many things going on. It sounds counterintuitive to try to grow your career by doing house concerts when we've all been brought up to want to be the next U2. We want to play bigger and bigger rooms, and
right.
The idea that you can actually play smaller and smaller rooms and actually do better, not just financially, but man, for me it was almost the equivalent of falling in love with playing music again, because I got so burned out. I toured on the college circuit and clubs and coffee houses. I've pretty much done it all. 8, 9, 10 years into it, when I felt like I was hitting this wall. I just couldn't break through in any meaningful way. I was just really burnt on playing. And then, sort of discovered this whole house concert thing, and it just sort of breathed new life into me as an artist. It's just like I'd gotten so used to being ignored that it really sort of devalues your self-esteem. Mm-hmm. You start feeling like you're not the artist that you wanted to be. And it's just amazing to me, how it sort of woke me up as a performer and makes me want to become a lot better.
That's cool.
When you get yourself stuck, like I was years ago doing the college thing, it's just like, gosh, just like no matter how good I get, it just seems to go right over people's heads. We tend to focus on the fact that you can make better money doing house concerts, but there's a whole other set of things that will affect you positively.
Yeah, it just sounds like an excellent way to share music and move your career forward as an indie musician. And incidentally, if any of our listeners out there do try this, putting on a house concert, let us know how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's several house concerts that I do on a yearly basis now. Friends of mine that, I basically, talked them into doing one. And once the show was on the road, they were like, wow, this is amazing. We need to do this every year. And so it becomes a yearly tradition, and you see a lot of these people, a lot of their friends, year after year, and you sort of develop these lifelong fans. And when you go do that concert, you don't sweat about how many CDs you're going to sell, and if you're going to have enough money to pay for a hotel that night. Everything just seems to fall into place.
Well, thanks so much, Fran, for taking the time to talk with us. I know our listeners appreciate it, and I encourage everybody to check out Fran's website, concertsinyourhome.com, and thanks for being with us, Fran.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm always anxious to get the word out about this. If anybody has direct questions for me, if you go to the website, you go to the contact screen, all those emails come directly to me, so I'll be happy to answer any questions from anybody.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the DIY Music Podcast. A quick programming note, by now you've probably noticed that we normally air episodes once every other week. So once every 2 weeks we've been averaging a new episode. And in each episode we've normally had an interview segment and then a roundtable discussion where I'm joined by Robert, Chris, and Jordan to kind of hash out the topic at hand. Well, we're going to tweak that a little bit. We're going to attempt to do a podcast every week, and we'll have the interview podcast, and then the following week we'll have the roundtable podcast. This way we can throw in some other things like a news segment and have more time for listener feedback, and just not have to worry about pushing the hour length, because last podcast got a little long, and I know for some people that becomes a very labor-intensive download for your computer. So we're going to try that out. Let us know if you have any major objections to that. So the bonus will be that you'll get a new podcast every week instead of every other week. And finally, I want to remind you that you can email us at info@cdbabypodcast.com and keep the show ideas coming. This one was completely an idea that someone emailed to us, and we thought sounded great. Let's do it. So keep those coming, and we'll catch you next time. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.